Hi guys, I want to welcome you to day 1 of the Stress Less 5-day challenge. Today's going to be learning about the cause and effect of stress, how it affects our bodies, and what are some of the things that can happen. I'll just fix up my camera when we are stressed. So we would have all heard of the fight or flight response. It's also known as the fight, flight, or flee response, or the stress response, hyperarousal, and also is known as the acute stress response. So what is that? Well, when a person or an animal is in a normal, calm, relaxed state, the body's function is what's known as the relaxed state, relaxation response, or homeostasis. And what ends up happening is when a stimulus is perceived by the brain, so whether it's an awareness of danger or a perceived threat, a message is sent through our brain. And what this does is this message increases the mental awareness. So it kind of makes you become hypervigilant. You become more alert and more attentive to your environment. The physiological reactions to this signaling occurs even before the brain has time to consciously and intelligently assess the situation. So our body is already going into the stress response before our brain has the ability to ascertain whether or not we are actually in danger. And what this means is that when there is a perceived threat to the well-being of you, the flight or fight reaction commences before you have that awareness. And to be able to assess the level of danger you may or may not be in. So the system acts before it thinks to provide the fastest possible response to the danger. So how this all comes about is the physiological actions are in the system, both directly and indirectly. And through the release of the adrenaline from the adrenal glands, your body goes into this process. So what are some of the physiology of the stress response? Once these hormones are released into the body, they actually facilitate immediate physical reaction, which means once your body's pumping those chemicals into your system, your body then starts to do it. It's an automatic response mechanism. And it's trying to prepare for what they refer to as a violent muscular flee, meaning it's trying to get you ready to fight or flee from your perceived threat. So some of these reactions are your body shuts down certain things and it will increase other things. Like, for example, your heart rate will speed up and your breathing becomes shallow and quick. Your body will start to shut down systems it doesn't need. Things like your digestive system, it will slow down or it can actually stop. It can affect certain parts of your body like your sphincter muscles. It can, constriction of the blood vessels occurs. It liberates, it takes liberation of your nutrients for your muscle action. It will also dilate the blood for increased blood flow to muscles. It relaxes the bladder. It can decrease your sexual function. It increases your blood pressure and your pulse rate, and your adrenal secretions flush into the bloodstream. So within seconds, the body's full energy potential is realized. So you can actually deal effectively with the perceived threat. So that's what your body does on a physical level when you're under stress. Now, imagine what's going on in your body if you are under stress for a long time. This is where adrenal fatigue can come in. This is where we can feel extremely tired all the time, irritable, because our body is flooded with these chemicals based on our perceived threats in our society. Not only do we have a physical change to our stress, but it also psychology. So the psychological, it impacts us through the stress response. So a typical example of a stress response, and this is probably the best way to explain it. So imagine a deer, grazing calmly in the meadow. It's what we would refer to as maintaining a homeostasis, or a stable, constant condition. So it's kind of really chilled. If the deer sees or senses a lion closing in for the kill, the stress response is activated like that. So the escape requires intense muscular effort, supported by all the body systems. The sympathetic nervous system is activation, provides all of these needs. So how does that look in our bodies? Well, here are some examples. High blood pressure, high cholesterol, hypertension, joint pain, MS, muscle stiffness, backaches, disturbed sleep, ultimately strokes, and ulcers and digestive disorders. So these are some of the things that can show up through the stress response. In our psychology, it impacts our body. So what do? We're under stress. We're being bombarded by things all day, every day in our society. Stress is really paramount in our world. No one's immune to it. So how do we stop stressing when life is so crazy, when stuff is happening all the time, and our body is automatically going into this fight or flight response and is starting to do all of these things without us really even knowing? Well, we've got to become aware of the relaxation response. So this is the counterpart to the fight or flight response. Now, the relaxation response occurs when the body is no longer in perceived danger, meaning that when we feel like we're not under threat, we're safe, then our body will start to change out of the fight or flight response. So the automatic nervous system function starts to return to normal. Now, during this response, the body moves from a state of physiological arousal, which includes the increased heart rate, the high blood pressure, the slow digestive functioning, the decreased blood flow to the extremities, the increased release of hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, and other responses preparing the body to fight or flee, to a state of what they refer to as a physiological relaxation, where blood pressure, heart rate, digestive functioning, and hormone levels return to their normal state. During this acute stress, this response occurs naturally once the threat is perceived as gone. So the relaxation response is a physical state of deep rest. Right? So when we're chilling and relaxing, we're allowing our body to calm down. It changes the physical and the emotional responses from stress. So how do we see this in our world today? Well, when we're under the pump, when we're working full time, maybe we're running after kids, maybe we've got financial pressures, maybe we've got family pressures, maybe we've got work pressures, and all of that is compounding on us. And we keep trying to show up every single day. And we stay under that pump for a long period of time. The adrenaline and that cortisol is being pumped into your system. So what are some of the things you can do to help reduce that? Well, it's finding the things that you like to do. It's finding the little things that you don't have to do anything in. For me, it's going to the beach. So when I get to go to the beach, I can feel my whole body go, ugh. And what I also do is I sigh, which is my body's way of shifting the energy of the stress out of me. I can feel it slowly dropping down. Recognizing stress in today's society. Look, today's society is hectic. It's just nuts out there. We live an overstimulated lifestyle, and most people are highly stressed. Many people do not have really good stress management skills. In fact, I would say they have really poor management skills. Their idea of managing stress is trying to learn how to cope with what they're at and add on top of that. The other thing with stress, and when we're in high levels of stress, is the stress in itself. We are not in the right frame of our brain to be making decisions. So when we're in high levels of stress and we're trying to make life-changing decisions, it's not a good time to do it. You want to be able to be making those decisions when you're in a calmer state. So this fight or flight response, when we can learn stress management, it helps us to mitigate the fight or flight response. And, with civilization being the way it is, and we have to accept that, there are some problems in life, there are things that happen, but we can absolutely get back in control and just manage our own stress levels. When we have significant increase in stress, this is how it shows up in our society. This is how it shows up in our world. So I've shown you the physiological symptoms of stress. I've shown you the psychological symptoms of stress. But here are the societal symptoms of stress. Increased stress increases stress-related illnesses. There's an overburdening of the medical system, drain on public finances, our health insurance premiums. It decreases work productivity, right? Higher rate of sickness and illness. There's also rising crime, particularly violent and drug-related crimes. There's also road rage is another. So people, when they're highly stressed, will lash out because they need to shift and let go of what they're, all this stuff that's going on. Then you've got, obesity, rising drug and alcohol addiction, more frequent relationship breakdowns. Most relationships break down under stress. But there's one thing that is, so when we talk about stress isn't always negative though. I mean, what I'm referring to are the things in life that can create negativity, the cause and effect. So, some of the things that cause stress are, big things like relationship breakdowns, financial situations, moving homes, selling homes, building homes, getting married, getting divorced, going through a death of a loved one, changing careers, work in itself, balancing, all these things in our lives. All of these things contribute to our stress levels. So what is positive stress? Well, positive stress is stress that kind of helps us get motivated, stress that leads us to be able to accomplish more. Okay? So when we don't have positive stress, it can leave us feeling a little bit bored, unchallenged or unmotivated. But the stress so we want a little bit of stress. So that little bit of stress keeps us goal orientated. It helps us keep moving forward. It keeps us motivated. It keeps us achieving things. And it helps us to keep moving, not just through life, but physically as well. But we want to also look at some of the things that can go against us. So when we have all that positive stress, that's really amazing. But we want to look at the negative stresses and the human behavior of all the manifestations of the fight or flight response. All right. So in our current times, these responses persist as part of our physiology, right? The fight or flight response is more wider these days than what it was in our ancestral days. Okay. Some of the things that we want to look at so how can stress affect us on an individual level? And the stress response is when we perceive there's a threat, our body does all of these things. We go from here to here, right? And then we sit up here. We forget what this feels like. But prolonged stress causes these things: alcohol and drug dependencies, anorexia, anxiety and panic disorders. Look at anxiety now, it's prevalent in our society. Asthma, allergy, skin diseases, cancer, chronic fatigue syndrome, chronic pain, constipation, colitis, irritable bowel syndrome, because it affects our digestive, depression, immune system, depressed immune system, depression, increased likelihood of colds and infections because our immune system is lowered, diabetes, sexual arousal, our libido gets affected by our stress. We might have difficulty, going to the bathroom. We might get more bladder infections or bladder diseases. Erectile dysfunction is another symptom of stress. Headaches and migraines, heart disease and heart attack. These are just some of the many illnesses that are brought on by stress. So you can see how important it is that we recognize the stress in our lives, that we're able to unpack how that stress is playing out in our world. How do we get from here down to here? Because this is what I know. Physiologically, you cannot be stressing and relaxing at the same time. Your body can't do that. Your body will stay up there if you keep putting yourself under the pump. How you think, the conversations you have about yourself and your life will keep you up there. The way you view your world will keep you up there. Your belief systems can keep you up there. If you believe that you have to do everything, if you believe that, I can't relax till everything is done, so that's a good one, then these play out in your world and they stop you from actually coming back down. Our body is an amazing tool. It has the ability to reduce that stress down because it's already designed for it. The fight or flight response is only technically meant to be activated when we're under a life threat. It is, it's been around for a very long time. It's genetically coded in us. Back in the caveman days with the saber-toothed tiger, if you saw a saber-toothed tiger in a bush, sure, you would want the stress hormones to be pumped into your system to help you fight or flee the saber-toothed tiger. But back in those days, once that happened, they got back to their campsites with their fires. They went straight back into homeostasis. But in modern day society, that's not what's happening. What's happening is we are constantly staying in these high levels of stress. We're not able to shift it. Maybe we've got some issues with work. We're under the pump with finances. So all of these things will contribute to your stress levels. Being aware of what causes stress, how it affects you, you can then start paying attention. One of the best ways to help reduce stress is to breathe. Now, I know that sounds really obvious, but many people don't know how to breathe properly. There is actually a specific way to breathe. So take a deep breath. Take a real deep breath. And as you breathe in, you'll do a couple of things. You'll take a deep breath in, but it'll feel like it's a bit constricted. Or you'll take a deep breath in, but you do this. Then you breathe into your shoulders. Our lungs are shaped like that. This bottom part is the widest part. Now, I don't know the terminology of it. I'm not a medical person, but what I do understand is the receptors that help draw out the oxygen into your system. There's more of them down the bottom than there are up the top. But if you also look at that, there's more space down here than there is up the top. The majority of people only breathe into the top third of their lung. That's it. And when they take a deep breath, they breathe it up into their shoulders. It's not going down to their lung. People who smoke breathe properly because they take a deep breath of that cigarette and they get that cigarette smoke all the way down into their lungs. The problem is the chemicals in that cigarette are putting the body under stress, but they're taking the right type of breath, which is why they kind of go, oh, I'm relaxing. Cigarettes relax me. It's only because they're taking that breath. But like I said, they're pumping that chemical into their system, which it's counterintuitive. So when you can learn to breathe, take better breaths, deeper breaths, breathe correctly, you will bring your stress down. Like I said, you can't be stressing up here and be down here at the same time. So the only way our body can bring it down is through breath, taking deep breaths. But we want to slow pace them because if we're not used to it, we can kind of get a little bit lightheaded. So practicing to take a deep breath. Now, one of the bonus sheets you're going to receive in your emails today is my cheat sheet on how to breathe. It's just a quick little step, but it's a good way to practice. There's a couple of ways you can do it. First of all, pay attention. Do you breathe into your shoulders? When you take a deep breath, does your stomach go in and out? Because this is the other thing, especially with women, we're kind of taught to hold our stomach in. You're not allowed to have a fat stomach. So we hold it in, but as we're holding it in, we're kind of restricting ourselves. So when we take a deep breath, it's almost like picturing a balloon that fills up into your abdomen and you're blowing it and it expands. So it's like your abdomen expands, your stomach goes out, your shoulders stay still, and all that air goes all the way down, right down to the very bottom of your lung, where you can start, your body will take out the oxygen. The oxygen is like a fire extinguisher to all the neurons that are going off in that high alert that you get put under when you're highly stressed. Being able to bring that down is going to naturally start helping you feel calmer. Being aware of some of the things that affect us in our society that create our stress in our life. Some of you are probably used to being up here and that feels like you're normal. A good indicator of that is if you can't sit still. If you kind of keep having to go, that's that energy, that's that we've got to keep moving. Being able to check in and see, some of these things that we're doing in our life, are we doing it to help mitigate our stress, which is actually creating us more stress, like drinking more alcohol, smoking cigarettes, using drugs. Food is another way that people will use stress. Look at our bodies. Are we suddenly gaining weight? Are we suddenly losing weight? These things are indicators that maybe we're under stress. So being able to stop and pause and go, okay, breathe, take a deep breath. Now, if you can get into the habit of taking deep breaths, you can do 10 real slow breaths. So you count it in for 5, out for 5. That's nice and simple. There's a little point at the top that you can pause before you slowly breathe out, taking controlled deep breaths, making sure your shoulders are staying still. That breath is getting down into your abdomen. A couple of ways to do it is you can put your hands on the sides of your rib cage because your ribs need to go out like that as your diaphragm and everything kind of moves. The other good thing about when we're breathing properly is our diaphragm goes up and down correctly, and it massages all of our internal organs and helps release the toxins out of them. So breathing correctly will help in a lot of different ways. So bringing that breath down, feel your ribs expanding, feel your stomach going out, feel your shoulders staying still. Now, this is often what happens, is it often feels like around your rib cage it's a bit constricted. That's because those muscles aren't used to moving this way because you haven't been breathing properly. When we shallow breathe, it encourages anxiety, it encourages the body to stay in the fight or flight response. By taking those deep breaths, we start to train our body how to start to relax again, how to come from here down to here. I lived a lot of years up here, and I thought that was normal. But now I realize that up here is so damaging to your health. It's, on a psychological level, on a physical level, we are not meant to be up here. We are meant to be able to come back down here. We just got to remember what that feels like. And in order for us to do that, we have to be aware of the cause and effect. We have to be aware of what it feels like in our bodies. We have to be aware of what are our stresses that trigger us. And we then have to become really knowledgeable in some of the tools that we can use quickly to help bring it down. When we start to recognize our stress going up, we want to be able to put those things into place to bring it down straight away. And one of those very first tools, as I said, is breathing. So I'm going to send you, make sure that I've got your emails. So if I haven't put your emails below, comment below. Tell me what you think of what this information is. I hope you tell me what you notice. I'd love to hear what are some of the things causing you stress in life. On a scale of 1 to 10, where would you put your stress levels? 1 being I'm super chilled and calm and life's okay, to 10 being I am way up here. I can barely breathe. I can barely think. I don't sleep. Where are you on the scale? And for an added bonus, I'm also going to send you through the stress scale. It just helps you see where your actual stress is at. Because the more big things you've got going on in life, the more things, for example, divorce or a death or a sale of a house, they're all going to put you in high levels of stress. And if you've got a whole bunch of them all going on at once, you're going to be up here. So you want to, really important to learn to bring that down so you can make better decisions, so you can think clearer, so your health improves, so you're less likely to get sick. These are all the things when we can mitigate stress we'll benefit from. We will have better sleep. We will feel better. Our mind chatter won't be as loud or as heavy. We will, start to feel better within ourselves. Our weight might drop. We might gain weight, because some people who are highly stressed lose a lot of weight. Our body will function better. There are so many benefits when we can reduce the stress, but we have to recognize the cause. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Comment below. Please be interactive. It's really awesome. I love sharing this information, and I look forward to day 2 with you tomorrow.